lecture as we progress forward. Okay. So what are the modes of heat transfer? To simplify the entire thing into a very bulleted and very specific or very objective manner, you can see that there are three modes of heat transfer. One is called the conduction, the other is called the convection, and the third is called the radiation. So you can see here. So my cursor is visible to all of you. Can somebody confirm me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So you can see that, conduction, we are going to discuss what is conduction today. Essentially, it is a diffusive phenomena. Say, suppose if you heat up one part, what happens? Like, the molecular vibrations, they transmit or they transfer the heat from one place to the other place, and in the process, the heat propagates. Okay, so this particular method is called the thermal conduction. This conduction is very different from the conduction that you have studied for electrical conduction, okay, or for the magnetic conduction, okay, or different other types of conduction that you have studied. But then, phenomenologically, they are very similar. Okay, but the topic is here we are trying to see how the thermal waves are propagating. Okay, not the electron propagating. So electrical conductivity, thermal conductivity, these are two different parameters. So one of the ways that thermal waves can propagate is the thermal conduction. The other way it can propagate is through fluidic movements, okay, which is called the convective movement. Convection is associated with, say, suppose if you take a cup of tea, right? Now, say, suppose if it is very hot, what you do, you start like, blowing some air, something like this. Now, when you are not blowing the air, the process of heat transfer was purely conduction. But when you started blowing air on top of the surface, what happens? Now, what you are doing, whatever is the hot fluid that is there, you are removing with the help of the cold fluid, okay, in order to maintain the temperature gradient high between the material and the surrounding. And in the process, what you are doing in the process, you are making the heat transfer process to happen in a very fast rate. Okay. Now this is the overall idea. We are going to see how they are really managed in a typical scenario. So the second mode of heat transfer is called convection, where like fluid movement helps you in the heat transfer process. And the third mode, which is called the radiative heat transfer. In this situation, in a radiative heat transfer process, you actually do not need any medium to be there. Like, say, suppose, sun is so many million kilometers away from us, but then early morning when it comes up, what happens? You very clearly see that that there is some heat wave that is coming from sun to earth, and this particular heat transfer happens irrespective of any medium present, okay, in between the two surfaces, and that process is called the radiation heat transfer. Just like, say, suppose if you burn some sticks or some wood, what happens? Like, the fire is generated, but you can feel the heat if you are away from the fire. Okay, so one way of having the fire, one way of having the heat is a convective process. Maybe the air which is getting heated up in the immediate vicinity of the fire is coming towards you. So that process is called the convection. Whereas there is another thing that happens, like, there is a direct radiation of this heat into your hand. That is what is called the radiation process. So typically we have three modes of radiation, okay, which are called conduction, convection, and radiation. There are intermediate varieties of these conduction, convection, and radiation also. We are going to discuss them one by one. Okay, so heat as the form of energy can be transferred from one system to another system. So when the heat will be transferred, whenever there is a temperature difference. Okay, and this temperature difference is called the driving force. Okay. Okay, there should be a driving force. Why should be one process may happen? There should be a driving force. So the temperature difference is measured as the driving force for any heat transfer. Okay. Now, a thermodynamic analysis is concerned with the amount of heat transfer of a system as a system undergoes a process, one equilibrium state to the another equilibrium state. Okay, thermodynamic analysis is the amount of heat transfer that is in the system. So one equilibrium state to the another equilibrium state. Whereas the science that deals with the determination of rate, such as energy transfer, is the heat transfer. So how fast it is going or how slowly it is going. And what is the consequence of that? How fast and fastness or slowness of the process. Okay, in order to ensure a particular efficiency to your engineering design. That is what is heat transfer. So heat transfer is associated with the kinetics of the thermal motion. Okay, whereas thermodynamics is associated with the equilibrium system. Say what is the total amount of energy that is available and how much it is possible. Whereas heat transfer talks about, say, suppose given a situation, how much would be the heat transfer? It need not be under equilibrium condition. Okay. The transfer of energy as heat is always from higher to lower, higher temperature to medium to the lower temperature, as told in previously. And there can be only 3 ways this is possible. Okay, and all these modes, they require the existence of temperature difference. Okay, so any engineering process you will find they are associated with 2 things. One is the driving force, I mean the motivation to do the thing. And second will be the resistance. Okay, what is coming on the way? What exactly is restricting the whole thing? So suppose you want to run. Okay, so your workout, your muscles, your food that is giving you the energy to run. Whereas the friction that is there with the air to your body or with the surface to your food, whatever friction is there, that is a restrictive force that is dragging behind you. Now, the fastness, the rate at which you can run, it depends on these 2 competing forces acting against each other, and which one is winning, and how much is per unit time that difference is there. That decides what is the rate. Okay. So engineering interpretation is what you have to model such systems, different modes of heat transfer. So how do we approach? We first look at the physical problem. Say hot coffee is cooling down. Okay, so hot coffee is enclosed inside a thermos. Okay, a potato is exposed inside a. So we look at these problems, from outside. We look at the problem, identify the important variables, make reasonable assumptions and approximations, apply relevant physical laws, and then form a differential model. Okay, which is within this restrictions, and then apply applicable solution technique, apply boundary conditions, and find out the problem. So this is a typical attempt. So when I come to know about, there are 3 phenomena, which is called conduction, which is called convection, which is called radiation. So my objective first will be to look at the physical problem. Okay, make necessary assumptions, identify important variables. Okay, apply relevant physical laws, and then form the differential equation, solve it with adequate boundary conditions, appropriate boundary conditions, and then look at the problem and see, look at the solution and see the problem and see how much you can explain about the problem. So then your engineering framework will be ready, interpretation will be ready, the design parameters will be ready for the proposed system. And as I discussed in the last class, that Newton, Joule, and Fourier, perhaps these 3 are the building blocks of all the new things that has happened in the modern science, in terms of heat transfer. They have a huge contribution in terms of, before the quantum mechanical thing they appeared, the engineering progress based on the phenomenal and pioneering contribution from these 3 persons. So let us take up what is conduction. Please note that whatever we are doing right now, these are elementary, and we will revisit these equations as we progress in the course, as we start understanding the complexities of the subject. We will keep revisiting these these equations again and again from different directions, and with larger amount of complexity associated with that. And then you will see that these elementary things, the origin and all will become much clearer. Okay, so first we will make the statement, we will try to analyze the system, and then we'll look from the comprehensive perspective that how exactly they can be dealt with a common framework. Okay, so that will be the idea. So let us start, like how do I understand a conduction? Say suppose this is a one-dimensional surface that I take, and it has a width of delta x, and this area I call A, this area I call also A. I just keep them as kind of like semi-infinite surface. Okay, and in this delta x, I can see there is a change of T1, which is a higher temperature on this side, and T2, which is a lower temperature on that side. If I create a temperature gradient like this, which is the driving force for heat transfer, then I see a rate of heat transfer, which I call is Q dot. Okay, the rate of heat transfer, Q dot. Dot means per unit time. Q means the amount of heat that is flowing. Okay, that means amount of energy that is flowing per unit time, joule per unit time, joule per second. That means it is, what is the wattage? Okay. Now here I tell you a very important thing that, if I ask the question, what is the difference between energy and power? Joule is the unit of energy. And what is the energy of power? Now, why do you require two variables? Now, if you look at these two variables, you will find out energy is more of a scientific variable. Okay, up to the point you are analyzing, you will be worried about like, how much energy is available. It is like, how much of money that is available in the bank. Correct? But power is energy per unit time. Say, suppose you have an ATM card, and in the ATM card, at one time you can only withdraw 10,000 rupees. Right now, that is the limit. So although you have 1 lakh rupees that is available in your bank, right now you cannot access that amount of money in the bank, but then you can only access 10,000 rupees out of that money. And that is what becomes a restricting factor in terms of time domain. Say, suppose you know a lot of things, you know a lot of maths, you know a lot of physics. But moment a question is asked to you, you have to browse through in your brain whatever is there in your brain, and from there you have to come up with a particular conclusion. Okay, in say 5 minutes time, when you are into an example, or when you are asked when you are confronted with a question, say suppose in your job interviews, right? It is about that 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute. How do you respond? How quickly you gather a conclusion from the amount of information that you have in your head? That actually talks about the power. So power is more of an engineering variable. Okay. Say how fast the car starts. What is the pickup of a bike? Okay. So that actually is decided by power. Whereas energy is, engine wise, you have given adequate amount of fuel, ABCD, FGH, okay. But how fast do that energy is brought into action? That is what is the variable called power. Okay, which is an engineering variable. You need the computer to work faster. Okay, you need your mobile phone to download materials faster. Okay, this is where you require power. This is where the concept of time is coming. It has to be per unit time. Okay, if you are looking at the total energy available, and if say suppose if the download takes place in 45 hours time, that's a very good scientific achievement, but that's not a very good engineering achievement, because the time required is very, very high. So that's why here I just wanted to spend some time that Q dot, this dot part is important. Q is very, very important for a situation when you are doing an energy analysis, which is the thermodynamics. In thermodynamics, you will just look for the Q, whereas in heat transfer you will look for the Q dot. Okay, which is the power, the quickness, how fast it is going. And that's where the understanding changes. So you can understand that this Q dot is the rate of heat transfer, and this A is the area. So Q dot by A will be your rate of heat flux. Okay, and Q by A will be your heat flux. So Q by A is a thermodynamic parameter, whereas Q dot by A is a kinetic parameter, is a rate parameter, and this is where you are looking for the rate of heat transfer. Okay, so what does it say? You know, in terms of conduction, let us first look at the formula, and then we will go back to this write-up. What do I say? That this rate of heat conduction is proportional to this area through which it is going. Directly proportional. More is the area, more will be the heat transfer. More is the temperature difference, that is the driving force, more is the heat transfer, and inversely proportional to the thickness. So if the thickness is higher, then it will take longer time to have the same amount of temperature difference. Okay, so you can see the denominator coming as the resistance and numerator is coming as. So essentially you will find that delta T is the driving force and thickness by area. You know, these three parameters you will see later on, they will come as the resistive force. So rate is always, you know, it is between two competing actions. One is facilitating that, which is the temperature difference, and one is restricting that, which is a combination of delta X and Ka. We will see that as we progress in the heat transfer. Just remember this. Now rate of conduction, then I can write Q conduction is what? Q conduction is proportionality. So A delta T by delta X, and then K comes as a proportionality constant. Now T1 was the initial, T2 was the final. That's why I have initially written T1 minus T2. But then when I convert it to delta T, I can see that the final is less than the initial. Okay. So if I put T2 minus T1, then what will happen? One negative sign will come. This negative sign is an indicator that as you are progressing, there is a drop in the temperature. Okay. And what is the unit of this? The unit of this is watt. So this is the mathematical interpretation as we saw in this particular slide, that from physical problem to the differential equation, I just get very simple one-dimensional arguments across a surface. You know, you can argue that this cannot be linear, this can be parabolic. Okay, this can be something else. Okay, this area can be like, you know, two-dimensional. You can argue many things. Okay, but then, you know, as a first order model, this looks like a very good assumption that, you know, as temperature difference increases, you may see the rate of heat transfer increases. Okay, as the area increases, rate of heat transfer increases, and as the thickness increases, you know, the rate of heat transfer goes down. So if you look from the conduction perspective, these are the three very important aspects, parameters that are conjugated in order to get, you know, this particular equation, which is called the Fourier's first law. What is the assumption? What is the assumption? They have said that conduction, they define as the transfer of energy from the more energetic particles of a substance adjacent to the adjacent less energetic one as a result of interaction between the particles. So what they are assuming, that there are a set of particles here, there are a set of particles here, there are a set of particles here. Now, if you have this ambient temperature higher, what happens? This ambient temperature first make this particle a little bit of higher energy. Okay, now that actually helps in transmitting some amount of energy to that. Whereas you maintain an ambient condition like this, say suppose you have a air conditioned room. So inside the room you have temperature of T2, which is like this. Outside you have a temperature of this. So across the wall you have a temperature gradient like this. And how this temperature gradient is maintained? Because, like, you know, one of the molecule without getting displaced, you know, it is giving some amount of energy to the other. And that is the first assumption of conduction. We'll come to this in larger details as we progress, how the modern interpretation of conduction is. Now in gases and liquids, the conduction is due to collision and diffusion of the molecules through their random motion. Sometimes it is stationary for a solid. In liquid, they may move. Okay, so this collision and diffusion, it's a diffusive process. You know, conduction is thought as it's a diffusive process. Diffusive process means, say suppose if you do a mass transfer experiment, say suppose you take a Petri plate, and in the Petri plate you put a little bit of blue dye. So over a period of time, what you will see, this blue dye will start dispersing into the entire petri dish. Okay, this is the first introduction of molecular diffusion in your life. The first experiment. This particular diffusion is called mass diffusion. What is happening in the place where you have put the dye? This particular place has a very high concentration of dye molecule, whereas in the water you have got very less amount of dye molecules. So now what is the driving force? The driving force becomes the concentration gradient. What is the driving force for heat transfer? Here you can see it is the temperature difference. It is the driving force. That is T2 minus T1. Now, if I just do the same thing, you will see if I do C2 minus C1, C1 is the place where I have the dye and C2 is the place where I have water. So that actually will establish a concentration gradient. Now, because of this gradient, what will happen from high concentration region to the low concentration region, the molecules will start diffusing. And in the process, you will see this particular system will undergo, if you leave it for 2 hours, you will see that entire water has become blue. This particular phenomena is called mass diffusion. And you can really imagine in a conduction process, temperature also diffuses like that. So suppose, I create a hotspot inside a room. Okay, so suppose I lit a matchstick. Okay. Now, what happens? This matchstick is generated locally, energizing the place, so the temperature will become near the matchbox very high. Now, what will happen? This temperature, this high temperature, they will excite the gas molecules that are around that, and it will. Of course, there will be different other convection and radiation. For the time being, if you just forget convection and radiation, you can see there is a slow diffusive movement of the thermal energies because of the conduction that is taking place, which is through collision and diffusion processes. Okay, in the solid, it is due to the combination of vibrations of the molecule in the lattice and the energy transport by free electrons. Okay, and in the liquid, you can see their movement also. Sometimes they participate in the diffusive process. Right now, what people assumed in the beginning that the rate of heat conduction is proportional to the temperature difference and the heat transfer area, whereas inversely proportional to the thickness. So if I define conduction, for the first time I'm observing this phenomena, this conduction is not electrical conduction. This conduction is a thermal conduction. And then there, if I just try to understand the phenomena that okay, if there is a temperature gradient, if there is a temperature difference, something is going to happen. So what I do, I put a temperature difference here. And then if my rate of heat transfer is proportional to the temperature difference, if I rate of heat transfer is proportional to the area related to the heat transfer, and if my rate of heat transfer is inversely proportional to the thickness of the material, so I can put forward a very simple physical law, which is nothing but the Fourier's law of heat conduction. So delta X tends to 0. From 24 to 25, I get what? The conduction is minus Ka dt by dx, which you can write as the gradient of T. So what is K here? This K is called the thermal conductivity. Okay. So thermal conductivity is K. K is a measure of the ability of a material. So K is a material property here. Okay. So you will see say suppose copper. Suppose silicon, copper is a very high thermal conductivity material. So that copper, you may see for a given temperature difference, for a given weight, you can see that heat transfer is about 4010. This is flux, so 4010 watt per meter square. Whereas for silicon, this is 1480. So this is much less. Why? Because the thermal conductivity of silicon is much less than the thermal conductivity of copper. Copper has a thermal conductivity of 401, whereas silicon has a thermal conductivity of 148. So what is the unit of K? It's very simple. What is the unit of Q dot conduction? This is watt. Now A by dx is, A is meter square, this is meter, so this will be meter. And this will be either centigrade, degree centigrade or Kelvin. When you talk about centigrade, you will talk about degree centigrade, correct? When you talk about Kelvin, it is not degree Kelvin, it is only Kelvin, because Kelvin is an absolute scale. Centigrade is a relative scale. Okay. So what is the unit of K? K will be watt per meter. Meter means coming A by dx is giving you meter in the denominator, and dt is degree centigrade or Kelvin. So watt per meter degree centigrade or watt per meter Kelvin. Okay. So these are the two. I mean, these are all very similar. I mean, they are not very different. You know, you can, both are SI units. Okay. So the thermal conductivity of a material is, now why degree centigrade and degree Kelvin will not be different? Because you are looking for dt here. So the difference in temperature in Kelvin and centigrade will not be different, but absolute number will be absolute, of course, different. So Q, what is the unit of Q? Unit of Q is watt. What is the unit of K? Watt per meter degree centigrade or watt per meter Kelvin. Unit of A is area is meter square, and dt by dx is degree centigrade or Kelvin per unit length. That means per meter. Okay. Now dt by dx can be called as the temperature gradient. Okay, this is the driving force because of which this heat transfer Q conduction is taking place, and heat is conducted in the direction of decreasing temperature, and that is the reason why you have the negative sign here. Okay, so this is the differential form that we have obtained, and at different levels you will see that we will solve this differential form in order to generate solutions for different types of heat exchangers, different types of engineering equipment that we are going to encounter. And this particular formula is called the Fourier's first law of heat conduction. So how do you measure thermal conductivity? It's a very interesting experiment that has been designed. So I just kept it for you that, say I'm telling you these numbers, right? 401, 148. So as an engineer, how do I measure? So what I do, I put an electrical plug here, and I put a kind of like, electrical coil here, right? And with this coil, what I do, I put some amount of electrical energy. And you know that, if I put I amount of current through it, H will be I square RT. So I know how much amount of heat I am giving per unit time to this coil. So that actually gives me the Q dot. Now here I put a sample material of standard size where area is fixed. Okay. And I maintain a particular temperature difference, which is T1 and T2. This also I fix. This T1 I fix, T2 I fix. I put two thermocouples here. So delta T is known, A is known, okay, Q dot is known, and L is also known. And if I plug back into this equation, then what I can do, I can really keep changing this sample material to get the thermal conductivities of diamond, silver, copper, gold, aluminium, and you can see that. These are the metals. Okay, this is glass, brick. So you can see that the thermal conductivity, it reduces. You can see these are the polymers, okay, which are more or less insulators. Gases, you see they have very less thermal conductivity, whereas liquids have a little bit higher, and then metals have perhaps the highest, and highest being the diamond. Okay, so thermal conductivity of material is a measure of the ability of the material to conduct. How quickly it can really take the heat from here to here. So for silver, it will be very fast. Whereas for urethane, it will be very, very slow. Most of the heat will be accumulated here itself. So with that, what you can do, you can really call silver as a heat conductor. And you can call urethane, which is the foam, say suppose sofa, whatever you see, these are all polyurethane. So they are all insulators. Okay. So if something is, this is not an electrical insulator. Okay, by the way, this is a thermal insulator, which is very different from an electrical insulator. Although, I mean, you will find that there will be analogous situations. So heat conductor is very different from thermal conductor. So here you can see diamond is a very poor electrical conductor, but it's a very good heat conductor. Great. Okay. So you can see I have given different types of ranges. Conceptually, you can really see that solids will be more conductive than the liquids, okay, than the gases because of the molecular arrangements. And this is the watt per meter degree Kelvin in terms of thermal conductivity. So you can see these are the gases, then insulator, there's liquid, then non-metallic solids, then metals, okay, then pure metals, okay, then the non-metallic crystals. So you can see that how the thermal conductivity changes, typical ranges that has been given here. Okay, and you can see here we are measuring thermal conductivity, and then we are saying that at 300 Kelvin. Why? Because thermal conductivity is also a parameter which varies with temperature. It is not exactly a constant every time. For a given temperature, it is a constant. But if you vary the temperature, you may see some of the metals, they may not, thermal conductivity may not vary much. Whereas for gases, for helium, okay, for different types of liquids, okay, you may see that there is a variation. Sometimes it increases, sometimes it reduces. Please remember that these type of plots are called the semi-log plots. So here you can see this is normal coordinate system in the x direction, but in the y direction you can see that this is a log system like 0.0111. So even if the slope is very small, you have to understand that this is log. That means this variation is very high. In this direction the variation is very high. So this is a significant variation. This is coming, say, suppose about 2000 to about 500. So there is an order of magnitude variation when you see some slope like that. So for some materials, okay, so suppose platinum, you see that it is the thermal conductivity doesn't vary much with respect to temperature, whereas for different other materials you may see that with temperature it varies, it can vary significantly. Correct? So suppose I have given an example here, say for 100 Kelvin, copper is about 482. Say at room temperature you can see about 401. Okay, it reduces. And then for 800 you can see that it becomes 366. So copper, you can see here copper is given. So yeah, this is the line. Okay, so for copper you may see that there is a reduction. Okay, for aluminum you may see that a reduction, and which is understandable that as you are heating, like maybe the spacing between the molecules are increasing, and that may be reducing the thermal conductivity. Okay, the connection between them is becoming looser and looser as you are heating them up. Whereas for a gas, maybe the number of collisions are increasing with increasing temperature, and that is the reason maybe the thermal conductivity is increasing. I will tell you the molecular perspective. There are a few slides in lecture 3 and 4 where the exact molecular picture will be given based on the mean free path and all. You can also look at transport phenomena, the heat transfer chapter, 4th or 5th chapter. The first chapter of the heat transfer, I have shared the book with you. That is there in the repository. Okay, so there you can see that this heat transfer. I mean, what is the molecular interpretation of thermal conductivity? That is also given there. I'm going to discuss, as we progress in the course. So there also you will get some idea about why thermal conductivity changes with respect to temperature for different types of materials, and why there are different types of behavior. Okay, some interpretation one can really draw from the molecular arrangement, starting from crystal to amorphous structures, increase of collision, increase of movement from there. Great. Now, once you have understood the thermal conductivity, you need to really understand what exactly increases the rate of heat transfer. Because, say, suppose you want to cool down something very fast, then you have to increase the rate of heat transfer. Whereas, if you don't really want to lose heat from there, you have to put an insulator around that. So these are the two extremes that you need to do. Say you are supplying some high pressure, high temperature steam into a thermal power plant. What should you do? You should try and minimize the loss of heat. So in that process, you require an insulation. Okay. Whereas, say, suppose you have a cell and tube heat exchanger, you want to immediately cool down your products, and then you want to go for a post-processing of the products. So in that situation, you need to cool down the system very fast. Now, if you look at a parameter that is called thermal diffusivity, okay, and then this parameter, if you really focus upon for a material, you will be able to really see, which material to be used for which purpose. So first, let us define what is thermal diffusivity. So thermal diffusivity is defined as the heat conduction, ratio of heat conduction to the heat storage. Say, suppose if I give some heat to a material, say, suppose I have silver. I give some heat to the material. So you know that rho Cp will be the measure. Cp, the specific heat of the material, will be the measure of what? The measure of how much heat it can hold. I mean, of course, I can give you some money. Let's say, suppose today morning I give you about 20,000 crore rupees. So you will be overwhelmed. That will be like, too much money for you, right? So there is a capacity of a material to hold the heat, correct? Now, and there is a capacity to conduct the heat. Conduct means, you are transferring it. So if you give a silver molecule X amount of heat, it is going to hold a part of that X and it is going to transfer a part of that X. Whatever it is holding, that is the heat storage. And whatever it is conducting, that is K. So K by rho Cp, okay, this is the ratio which has a unit of meter square per second. This is also the unit of diffusivity. Okay, so this is called this is also the unit of mass diffusivity. This is also the unit of momentum diffusivity. This is also the unit of thermal diffusivity. So this is called the thermal diffusivity. So what is momentum diffusivity? You must have read by now in fluid mechanics that mu by rho, viscosity by density. What is the unit of viscosity? Kg per meter second. What is the unit of rho? Kg per meter cube. Kg per meter second. Kg per meter cube. If you divide, then what happens? Meter square per second. Okay. So mu by rho also has a unit of meter square per second, which is the momentum diffusivity. How fast, say, suppose you have a laminar flow, layer by layer happening. Say, suppose this layer is moving very fast. Then while it is moving very fast, it is transferring some of the energy to the layer that is adjacent to it. So it is moving a little bit slower. It is moving a little bit slower, right? So this is what is called the momentum diffusivity when the fluid flow takes place. Similarly, the heat, when you supply the heat, all these molecules, say suppose here if I see these are the molecular architecture, say suppose this molecule will hold a part of the heat and then will transfer a part of the heat. So conductivity is a measure of how much heat it is holding, how much hold it is transmitting, transferring, and Cp is the measure of how much heat it is holding, and the ratio between these two is called the thermal diffusivity, which is a kinematic parameter. K is a kinetic parameter. Cp is a thermodynamic parameter, but the ratio of this is a kinematic parameter. Why? Because this is only meter square per second, which is a multiplication of what? Meter per second into meter. Meter per second is what? Velocity. Okay, and meter is what? What is the thickness? The length. So velocity into length. So alpha is giving you the measure that how fast it is moving and how long it is moving inside a material. So if I really want a material to be insulating, I will go for a very low thermal diffusivity. If I want a material to be very highly conducting, I go for a very high conduct. So suppose if you see silver, you will see 149 10 to the minus 6. Whereas if you look at wood, so you will see that about 3 orders of magnitude less. Okay, say for wood. So these are all materials which are better thermal insulators, whereas these are all materials which are very good, heat conductors. So it is not only the thermal conductivity that decides the material of construction, it is basically the thermal diffusivity that decides the rate of heat transfer. So larger the thermal diffusivity, faster the production heat into the medium. So you can really, this is a very important engineering variable. And I just defined one very important dimensionless parameter, which is called Prandtl number, which is the ratio of the momentum to thermal diffusivity. It will be very handy as we progress in convection, you will see, which is nothing but the ratio of mu by rho by K by rho Cp. Mu by rho is the momentum diffusivity, K by rho is the thermal diffusivity, and from there you get Cp mu by K. Now this is a dimensionless number. So what does it say? That how fast the momentum is diffusing and how fast the temperature or how fast the thermal energy is, how fast the mechanical energy is diffusing and how fast the thermal energy is diffusing. Just keep these things in perspective. I'm just introducing one by one the parameters. Don't get scared. These are all very complicated parameters, but at the end of the day, we have to be we have to be very meticulous in first understanding them and then making use of them. Great. Now, after conduction, what is the next phenomena? It is called the convection. What is a convection? You can see that if there is a hot block, as I was telling that this is a cup of tea, okay? Now, if it is very hot, what do? You blow some air, and as you are blowing the air, what happens? The heated surface, the temperature of the surface, what happens? Say, suppose if it is a hot block, if you just leave it, and if you don't blow any air here, so what will happen? This particular air will immediately attain this temperature. Now, in that situation, what will happen? The temperature gradient will become very, very small. And you know that rate of heat, now you know after reading the Fourier law of conduction that the rate of heat transfer is always proportional to the heat gradient. So if I leave this hot block for a longer duration inside a medium, which is having temperature of the same temperature which is here, so what will happen? You will not see any heat transfer. However, if I blow air into it, what will happen? So it will replace this air is, suppose say this temperature is, say suppose Ts is the surface temperature, right? Now, if I blow air of temperature T, so what will happen? See, moment this part of the air is getting into Ts, so you are replacing with an air which is of temperature T. So again, you are trying to establish this temperature T minus Th in the immediate vicinity of the hot block. And in the process, what you are doing, you are basically trying to cool down the surface. So the mode of energy transfer between a solid surface and adjacent liquid or gas that is in motion, and it involves combined effect of conduction and the fluid motion. Okay. The faster the fluid motion, the greater is the convection heat transfer. If the fluid is stationary, then it is purely conduction. If the motion is very fast, then it is going to like, say suppose if some burn takes place, what do? You start doing like, so what are you doing? You are replacing the air that is in the immediate vicinity of your surface, which is at very high temperature, with the cold temperature that is there in your mouth. And in the process, what you are doing, you are trying to cool down the surface. Okay. Now, convection are two different types. One is called the forced convection, and the other is called the natural convection. Say, suppose there is a hot egg, and you are blowing air with a fan. So this is called a forced convection. Whereas if you keep the hot egg like this, what will happen? So the immediate place of the hot egg will have very hot air, and you know that with temperature, if the temperature goes up, the density of the air will be lower. So rho is proportional to 1 by T for air. So the density of the air will be lower here. The density of the air is higher here. So naturally, this hot air will undergo a buoyancy. So it is going to go up, whereas the cold air is going to come down. So there will be recirculations around this hot egg, which is called the natural convection. So natural or free convection is like, the system itself generates some convection currents. Okay. Which helps in cooling the surface, okay, which is called the natural convection. Okay, apart from the conduction that is taking place, whereas if you really blow air into that in order to cool it down, that is called a forced convection. What is the law, governing law? Again, very simple. Now here you see that earlier what we suggested, that for heat conduction, what we suggested that it is K into A into delta T by delta X. Okay, now this delta X, you will see this is replaced by this K by delta X. You will find in Newton's law of cooling, you will see this K by delta X is replaced by a parameter called H, or the heat transfer coefficient. So how do I define? The other parameters remain same. S is the surface. Q convection, this is the rate of heat transfer to convection. This is the driving force. T infinity is where? This is the T infinity, this is the surface temperature. So T infinity minus Ts. As is what? As is what, like, this is the As through which the heat transfer is taking place. But you have one parameter which is called H, which is the heat transfer coefficient, which is defined nothing but K by delta X. or K by delta. What is this delta? Delta is the thickness of this boundary layer that is existing near the surface. So H is K by delta. So delta is the film thickness, the thickness of the film of air, the boundary layer of the air that is in the immediate vicinity of the surface. And that is what is called the heat transfer coefficient. Okay, or the local heat transfer coefficient. You will see there will be different varieties of heat transfer coefficients as we go to the heat exchangers and all. But then, since this is K by delta X, so you can see watt per meter degree centigrade becomes watt per meter square degree centigrade or watt per meter square Kelvin. Okay, so since from unit also you can identify there is one thickness parameter that is there at the bottom. Okay, now for convection, this is what is called the Newton's law of cooling. This is the driving force, this is the area, and H is a heat transfer coefficient, which is property of the fluid adjacent to the surface. Okay, conductivity of the fluid divided by the thickness of the boundary layer. So you can see for gases it is like this, for liquids it is like this. Okay, for forced convection gases it is like this, for forced convection liquid like this. And this particular phenomena, this particular framework is used very extensively in the design of heat exchangers. Okay, heat transfer coefficient is not a property of the fluid. It is an experimentally determined parameter, and the value depends on the surface geometry, nature of the fluid mesh, properties of the fluid, and the bulk fluid velocity. We'll see how exactly this is to be determined. Now the last one before we close the class, and the most interesting one, because this particular phenomena connects us to the modern science, which is associated with photons, electromagnetic waves, particle physics, and everything started late 1800, early 1900. Everything started with this phenomena called black body radiation. Okay, what is a radiation? Radiation is a transfer of energy from one surface to the other surface without having even a medium in between, which was very surprising for when it was initially invented. But now we know that it is a quantum field. Correct? So everything is connected through a kind of quantum field. Now the quantum field is essentially in one place, if the energy of the quantum field is higher, in other place the energy of the quantum field is lower. So then that is the basis for any transportation or propagation of electromagnetic waves from one place to the other place. Now here I say that these are photons, but there can be different varieties. It can be photon, it can be particle. There are different. It can be X-rays, it can be alpha rays, it can be gamma rays. Photon is one example, one type of electromagnetic radiation. There can be so many different types of electromagnetic radiation. So okay, so what is radiation? Radiation is the emission of electromagnetic waves, and there is no intervening medium. And here we are going to only focus on the thermal radiation. We are not going to take up all the different types of radiations because it itself is a course. Now, one very important point to remember that radiation is a volumetric phenomena, but thermal radiation, the way we will consider, we are going to only look into the surfaces, because otherwise, these laws that we are going to use, they will not be very much applicable. Now, because of that, you have to remember that all bodies at a temperature above absolute zero emit thermal radiation. Okay, so at absolute zero, there will be absolutely no thermal radiation because there is no T. Okay, so it's very important to remember that 0 Kelvin is the datum here, is the reference point here. So you know that this radiation, one of the major important point of this radiation is that this is a high temperature phenomenon, and that's why you see that now the rate of heat transfer is proportional to what? Proportional to, now you can see that it is T to the power 4, rather than earlier we saw that it is only delta T for a conduction, delta T for a convection, but for radiation it is proportional to T to the power 4. Again, A and T to the power 4, right? And then sigma is coming as the Stefan-Boltzmann constant, as the proportionality constant coming from here. Now, this is the maximum, and what is the emission? Emission is if you look at the radiation emitted by real surfaces, it has one parameter that is integrated to it, which is called the emissivity. Now this comes from the definition of a black body. So you first have to understand what is a black body and what is a white body. I just have given you a cartoon here which defines what is a black body and what is a white body. Suppose you have a surface like this and you do not know whether the body is white body or black body. Okay. Now say you are radiating this particular surface, this particular material with certain incident radiation. So I call this as Q dot incident. Now if this red part is entirely reflected by this surface, that particular surface is called the white body. Okay. So this surface is not going to allow any absorption. Whatever is coming is going to get reflected from the surface, that is called a white body. Whereas, if in general for normal surfaces, what will happen? A part of this radiation will be absorbed, which will be proportional to the alpha. This alpha is called the absorptivity of the material, and a part will be reflected, which will be 1 minus alpha of the Q incident. This is the reflected part, and this will be the absorbed part. Whereas for a black body is defined as emissivity to be 1. That means whatever it will absorb, it will not reflect back. Okay, it will absorb the entire radiation. Okay, and then what will happen? Then it will emit the radiation. Okay, with an emissive power, with an emissivity of 1. Okay, it's a very tricky concept to understand. Everybody doesn't understand black body very clearly. A black body has emissivity to be 1. It's not reflectivity. Emissivity is different from reflectivity. Emissivity is what first you absorb the entire electromagnetic radiation and then you emit it. Okay, so that emissivity equal to 1 is the signature of a black body. You can see that aluminium foil has emissivity very small. Okay, say water has an emissivity of a very high emissivity. Okay, so black body radiation represents the maximum amount of radiation that can be emitted from a surface at a specified temperature. And the law that is followed is called the Stefan-Boltzmann law. Okay, we are going to revisit this. I'm just stating the law here in the introductory course, but then we are going to take up each and individual formula topic with the context, in the context of modeling and design of heat exchangers and all. Okay, so now you understand that absorbed incident, a part of the incident radiation will be absorbed, a part of the incident radiation will be reflected. Okay, so there is a part called absorptivity, there is a part called reflectivity, and there is a part called emissivity. Emissivity is associated with, it has very less correlation with it has a more correlation with the absorptivity. Okay, and it has a correlation with the reflectivity, but at the end of the day, what happens? Emissive power equal to 1 means that's a black body. Okay, now how exactly you define the governing law for a Q radiation? When you talk about the driving force becomes something like this: the Ts surrounding, Ts surface, Ts to the power 4 surface minus Ts to the power 4 surrounding. Okay, now this is the typical difference. Now why this 4 to the power 4? You can very clearly see that this particular flux, this particular wattage, or this particular power transfer will be minimal when the temperature is very low, say 10 Kelvin, 20 Kelvin, 30 Kelvin. You can do a calculation, just 10 Kelvin and 20 Kelvin. So you will see the difference will be very, very small. Whereas if the temperature difference is very high, just like, the temperature at the solar surface and temperature at the Earth's surface, so you can very clearly see that there will be a huge amount of radiative transport between the surfaces. So this is the typical variation. Different types of electromagnetic radiations that we generally experience, that radio waves, microwaves, infrared radiation, visible light, ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays. These are all different wavelengths. Okay, in terms of meter. Okay, 10 to the power 3 meter to 10 to the minus 13 meter. Okay, and the types of radiations are ionizing and non-ionizing. Non-ionizing ones like electric waves, microwaves, infrareds, visible rays, ultraviolet. These are all non-ionized waves. And ionization waves are the electromagnetic wave like X-rays, gamma rays, okay? And the particle beams are alpha particle, beta particle. So I've just given you a kind of like, different types of radiation. Radiation is not only thermal radiation. Radiation itself is a topic, a subject, okay? And now if you add up everything, total means it is about convection, it is about conduction, and it is about radiation, right? So I stop here, and then I open the forum for a few questions, and then we can really close today's class. You have any question?
So the dimensionless quantity that related momentum diffusivity and thermal diffusivity, could you please state the name again, and what is the significance of this quantity?
Yeah, so this is called the Prandtl number. Prandtl, Prandtl. Let me just go back. This is the one that you're talking about, correct?
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yes.
So it is called Prandtl, 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 Prandtl. Very, very, very famous. Any transfer book you open, you search for Prandtl number. Okay. So Prandtl number is a very, very famous number. Okay. This is the momentum diffusivity to thermal diffusivity ratio. Okay. Alpha, nu by alpha. Alpha is called thermal diffusivity. Nu is called momentum diffusivity. So mu by rho is your momentum diffusivity. K by rho Cp is your thermal diffusivity. And Prandtl number is mu Cp by K. Mu is the viscosity of the fluid. Cp is the specificate of the fluid, and K is the thermal conductivity of the fluid. Okay, it actually tells you about how fast the momentum is diffusing as compared to how fast the temperature is diffusing.
So this is relevant only for a fluid. Is that correct?
Yes, this is relevant for any flow. Yes, it is relevant for convectivity transfer. We'll come to this. I mean, in detail. I have just introduced the parameter. We'll come to this in detail. Any other question? You can raise your hand.
Sir,
Yeah.
SI unit of K. Hello?
Thermal conductivity, SI unit of K.
Yeah, sir, to calculate the SI unit of K, we did not consider the meter square for the area.
Thermal conductivity we considered A by dx is meter, correct? A by dx, I can think about meter, correct? So in the numerator, I have meter into degree centigrade, correct? Now Q is watt, and then meter into degree centigrade. That's what I divided, correct? So watt, meter, degree centigrade, correct? A by dx is meter. Dx is also there at the denominator, correct? Could you get it? Hello? Area A is meter square, and dx has a unit of meter. So area by meter is meter, and dt is degree centigrade. Now these two I am taking in the denominator of Q dot conduct as watt, and then meter degree centigrade. So that's what is watt meter degree centigrade, or watt per meter degree Kelvin. Clear?
Yeah, okay.
Understood? Yeah. Any other clarification?
Yes.
Any other clarification?
Sir,
Yeah.
can one type of radiation can interact with any other kind of radiation?
Yes, they can. Because these are all electromagnetic waves. Okay, so you can think about two waves. If they interfere with each other, then there'll be increase in the amplitude. Whereas if the two waves interfere out of phase, this is in phase interaction, maybe out of phase interaction, then what will happen? They may just phase out. Okay, so radiations are electromagnetic waves, and waves can interact and interfere with each other. Just like, say, suppose if you look at, say, suppose a fluid surface, correct? Now, when you pelt a stone, what happens? There will be fluid waves that will be created, correct? Now you pelt another stone, what will happen? There will be another set of waves are created. Now these waves, they may interfere with each other. So you may see that there will be like, interference of wave patterns, and then that may lead to like, attenuation or amplification of the waves to generate a kind of complex morphology in terms of radiative waves. So typically radiative waves propagate in that manner. It has all the wavelengths. Okay, so suppose from infrared to ultraviolet to X-rays, everything is there in a single composition, and they intermix with each other to create a network of waves around us. Could I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any other question?
Sir.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir, can you tell
sir,
more about...
Yeah, one by one. Maybe Piyush first.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead. Who was talking? I mean, Piyush or somebody else?
Sir.
Yeah, you had a question?
Yes, sir. Like
Please
in, sir, can you tell more about momentum diffusivity? Like in thermal diffusivity, heat transfer is done by temperature gradient. But what is the reason by in momentum diffusivity? Why it happens? Like it is because of collisions between particles.
Exactly. It is very similar to, like, say, suppose you have understood the mass diffusivity, correct? Now this
Yes.
particle says, I have taken a petri dish and I have put a dye. Now, since there is a concentration gradient, the dye is spreading like this. Now, say, suppose when the molecule is spreading from one place to the other place, the other water molecules were stationary in the beginning, correct? When I introduce the dye, I can assume that other water molecules were stationary. Now, since it has started moving, okay, say suppose I am mobbed by, say, suppose 23 different people, 200 different people, right? Now, say suppose if I start moving, what will happen? There will be certain people around me who are stationary. They will also move with me because of my motion. This is what is called momentum transfer. Okay, say if if 20 different people are surrounding me and I am at the center, and then if I suddenly start moving, so what will happen? Other people around me also will move, and I transfer the momentum to the other person. Clear?
Yes, sir.
That is called momentum diffusivity. So if somebody is moving, because of the motion, because of the velocity, there will be a transmission, there will be a diffusion of momentum from one person to the other person. Okay? Yeah. I think Bhargav was having a question, correct? Who else was asking a question? Please go ahead. Any question is there? Please go ahead. Okay, great. Since you people do not have question, so we don't have any class this Friday. So we'll meet again on Monday and Tuesday to take up lecture 3 and 4. And remember that Friday has a tutorial, okay? And you have to submit the tutorial in a week time. That we will discuss in the class itself, okay? So thank you so much. Thank you so much for your attention.